thank you again, Steph, for I don't know, agreeing, stroke offering to do this for us. It's really valuable when dads are in a place to share their story. And I know that when we first spoke, you wanted to get involved in some way, didn't you? And I think the offer that you made is a really good way to get you involved. You know, we've got some traditional volunteers who go out and speak to dads, but you know what you can share hits differently to what coordinators share as dads sometimes.
And I honestly don't have the time to actually go to places. So what I could do was from what I could do, really. Like.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. You can get a huge reach, can't you, on social media? So, could you, because obviously we've read the bit that you sent through to us, Steph, and it's a really great story. Can you just, but obviously we won't post that narrative that you've given to us, but could you just start by summarising a little bit about your kind of fatherhood journey from the 2-year-old to new baby, and kind of just basically a bit of a summary of that bit that you sent over to us?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. So I'm a dad. Well, she's going to turn 3 next week, a cheeky little girl. And I've also got a 9-month-old little boy. 2 very different experiences for birth and just sort of getting used to being the dad, really. So my little girl, she was born just at the tail end of COVID. So as everybody knows, there was all the restrictions and things like that, and the world was a slightly more scary, different place at the time. Didn't know what really restrictions would apply in the hospital. Didn't really know how I would balance it, like having a child with the work. And at the same time, we were living in a house that was only really made for 2 people, so me and my wife. So we had to also then look for a house to buy and do up at the same time. So that's kind of what happened. It all sort of it's almost a tsunami of lots of different things happened at once. So we managed to find a house that was big enough and near and where we wanted to do to live. Like, because we obviously had to think about things like schools now and future planning kind of thing. We found that about, I would say, 6 months before my daughter was born, and then we were trying to rush to beat the where they had the I can't think of what it's called, the tax break on the on buying a new home and things like that for new homes. So we were trying to beat that. Got that in, got the house sorted. It was quite close towards the end, but we managed to get in and make sure we didn't get get pummeled by the tax man. Got the house ready, then had to try and get builders in, all still while my wife's heavily pregnant with our first pregnancy, so trying to deal with that at the same time. Day came, still had builders in the house, so had to basically leave them the keys, say, right, you need to be out of here by the end of the day. Whatever you've done, just make sure it's child safe. Rushed off to the hospital. Birth went absolutely fine. My wife was amazing. Beautiful baby girl. We were home the next day. Came home to the house was livable, but there's still lots of bits and bobs to do. It was then that sort of like the reality of that's when it hits you, like, oh, what do I do now? I've got this tiny little thing that needs me. I also got my wife to take care of. I've also got to make sure the house is safe and things like that. Turns out that the builders that we got involved to do the bathroom had been a bit of cowboy builders. They'd also managed to cause a gas leak. This was all sort of within the first couple of weeks of my daughter being at home and things like that. Luckily, we've got some really good friends that sort of let us stay with them, and we had some really good contacts of like through other friends of good builders that came in really last minute, helped sort us out, because obviously they knew like it was pressing because we had a tiny infant in the house now. That all got sorted, but these were all sort of like little micro pressures that were sort of building up and up and up inside my head, that I was sort of running around. I only had 2 weeks off paternity leave at that point, so I was trying to spend time with the baby, to spend time with my wife, trying to get the building sorted, trying to find somewhere to live temporarily while we're trying to get the house sorted. Um, my wife's the main earner in our family, so I'd applied for the what's called shared parental leave now, and did get it, but at the time I didn't. But it was entirely up to my workplace. They could have said at a point yes or no. So that was another pressure in my mind, and I just basically sort of started spiraling. I couldn't even think. I couldn't even decide what t-shirt to wear in the morning, even though it was just pick up a t-shirt and put it on, because it was just another decision I had to make, and I couldn't physically fit another decision in my mind. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't really notice it myself. And I'm a kind of person that likes to sort themselves out. Like, just if something's wrong, I'll fix it, I'll sort it, I'll move on. What's the next problem? Work my way through them. And it was my wife that noticed that I had a sort of change in personality. I was getting more and more withdrawn, and I was just going, right, this, what's next, and sort of building up all these lists of problems that needed to be solved. And she really pushed me to go see a counsellor, because something wasn't right, and I was obviously not happy, and I was getting worse and worse and worse. I dragged my heels quite a bit. I was like, absolutely not. Whatever it is, I'll sort it. And I couldn't even work out what was wrong with me. In the end, I sort of relented, because obviously happy wife, happy life kind of thing. So booked a couple of counsellors, did some online ones first. Really didn't work for me. I don't, even though I work in an IT field and I'm used to talking over Zoom and things like that, it didn't work for me. So in the end, I went and saw a counsellor in person, and that sort of really was it was like something clicked in my head. I knew all the tricks that they play. Like, I know how they leave big silences to allow you to talk, and how they repeat things back to you. Like, because I've obviously read up to try and fix myself. And even knowing all that, and I was telling the counsellor, like, I know what you're doing. It worked. I only went for, it was 3 1-hour sessions in the end over the course of a couple of months, but it was almost just being able to talk to somebody and open up and sort of release some of those burdens. Nothing changed in the wider world. I still had the building to work to sort out. I still had work to actually do and go to work. I still wanted to spend time with my new daughter and things like that. But this counsellor sort of just clicked something in my brain, and I was like, right. And then from that point on, it was just almost sort of like it wasn't a quick fix. It was a very gradual, but things started to get better. And the dad anxiety, which I'd not expected to, like, I'd not planned for, things like that. That was what was the weight on my shoulder that I couldn't understand. It was trying to keep this little thing alive as well as everything else. And then you think to the future and think, oh my God, what about when they're a 10-year-old? What about when they're a 15-year-old? Like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? It was just all those gradual things. You start to these are things that need to be done, and you roll into them, and like, it was at this point I realized how much my parents have winged it, because I realized that every parent is winging it, because it's just like, you just roll with whatever the next thing is. And I started to embrace the chaos, is what I've sort of started to say now. And I started to enjoy a bit more, and then things started to get better. And 2 years later, we suddenly became pregnant again. And if you'd asked me before the counselling if we were ever going to have a kid again, I'd have gone, absolutely not, no way, because it was just, that would have been, I know, another explosion of pressure and stress that I couldn't deal with on top of everything else. But at that point, we got to a good place. It just proves that it just needed time. I just needed to talk to people, talk with my wife, talk with work. Work were brilliant in the end, because I'd been hiding all this from them, and I opened up to some of my colleagues, and they instantly started taking some of my workload from me and things like that. And I was like, I wouldn't have expected that, but it was like all these little pieces, the fitting together. And then, yeah, so my son's birth was a completely different story. It was. I wouldn't have said. I don't want really to say I bought the T-shirt and I knew what was going on, but the fact that we'd gone through it once, it wasn't this big scary. Oh, I don't know what's happening, because as much as like you go to NCT and they can try and prepare you, that first time it's still very scary, and it's all unknown, and you don't really know what you're walking into, or what your life's gonna be like afterwards, and it's completely different, but nobody can actually explain how your life changed. But then with my son, um, the now 9-month-old, he's also cheeky like his sister. Um, it's oh, with my daughter, I would have said the days where I was left alone looking after her were just, it was a lot. It was like I just felt like I had so much to do, and I was just trying to just feed her, change her, things like that. Now we put my daughter into nursery, and I look after my son, like for 3 days a week. So I get some quality time with him. Those are my days off, because I've done like, so what would have been just with my daughter on her own was the most stressful ever. The days where it's just him, oh, that's fine, because it's almost like, if when they're even when they're together now, it's fine. It's just it's exponentially more work. is all, and you just sort of, I suppose it's that learning to become a dad, but the experiences between how it was with my daughter and how it was with my son, I was obviously there for my daughter, but like some of these experiences I just didn't remember, because I couldn't. The stress was pushing out all, like I couldn't enjoy the memories. So like I know I was there for my daughter's first time she giggled, things like that, but it doesn't feel like a proper memory to me. Whereas the same thing that happened with my son, I'm there, I'm fully present in the moment, and like nothing else is interrupting, even though I do still have all those pressures and all those things to do. um it just goes to show how even if they'd been identical babies, which no baby is realistically, the how different an experience you can have from one to the next. And I wouldn't say having another baby is the solution to that. I'd already like got my head straight before we had the second child, and I think I would not advocate having another kid if you're not happy, kind of thing, because that isn't the answer. But I was so grateful for the fact that I was happy, and now we have this lovely family of 4, and it's just brilliant.
Yeah. That's an amazing story, isn't it? I mean, when you go on different training courses, you speak to different dads and whatnot, you hear this thing about, things don't always last forever, whether it's the crying or the difficulty feeding, or, the feeding in the night and whatnot. Nothing lasts forever, does it? And I think the way you've described things there is some proof, isn't it, that some of those tricky times, they don't last forever. They're for a period of time, aren't there? And often things do get better. And I was just going to ask you, not in too much detail about the therapist that you saw, but what do you remember doing differently at home in terms of your outlook or your approach or how you felt, or subsequent to some of those sessions? So you were taking some advice and getting things off your chest. What do you remember doing differently at home?
So I think
during that period,
the key thing that came out of the most of the sessions with the therapist, with the counselor, was that she said I'd lost my anchor, and that word really resonated with me, because I'd lost who I was as a person. I felt like I had, because we could no longer go out and go to the pub whenever I wanted. We'd left the house that we'd lived in for so many years and things like that. So it was all about sort of almost reclaiming myself. Um, I, I I I took time when I was at home to just sit there and just sit with my daughter, and just try not to think about anything other than just to be there. So, like I said before, I wanted to be in the moment, be present, and just take as much in. And other things like, what else? I was writing all these lists, but they weren't going anywhere, because it was just fakely stacking up a list of problems. So I changed my way of thinking. I was just like, right, just do one thing today, and if that gets done, fine. If it doesn't, you do it, and then do another thing the next day. And it was almost just bring it right down to just what needs doing now. Don't even think about the next things, because it was that sort of like almost tidal wave in my brain that was trying to push through, and I was like, that doesn't need worrying about at the moment. Let's just do this one thing. And it's almost sort of like going back to proper caveman, just one task, one task, one task, but just not putting any pressure on myself to just say, right, if we can get this one thing done today, brilliant. But you're also looking after your daughter, so that is also in itself one thing. So if you can do something else, that's a bonus. So,
Yeah.
What
And
do you think? Sorry,
So-
Darren. Over you. It's really interesting listening to you and the journey that you've been on. Like, there's some really tough moments where there's a lot of overwhelming stuff happening around you. What do you think the impact on your children has been of the support you've got, like the things that you've put in place to help yourself? What do you think the impact would be on them?
well, I'd hope they remember me more as a happier dad, like me smiling more most of the things. And like I say, they're both really cheeky now, so I'm hoping that that's what's rubbed off on them, kind of thing. Whereas, like I say, I was there, but I probably wasn't engaging as much, like because I was obviously thinking rather than rather than talking. And now I talk to them almost constantly, which is in its way a good thing and bad thing, because they write chat boxes back at me. But so
No, it's not a bad thing, definitely not. And we, like at Dad Matters, we advocate all the time for that kind of engagement of children, looking for cues, reacting and responding to what they need. And sometimes when you're really struggling, it's hard to do that. And I think you've elaborated on that really eloquently in your story about how when you are struggling, it doesn't really feel like you're there interacting with them to the full potential
yeah,
that you really want to do. And that help being able to talk. I think from my perspective, whenever I've had therapy, it's a strange one, because before I ever had therapy, I would have thought it was you go in, they'd tell you what to do to fix yourself, and then you come out. But actually, it's more about taking all of that stuff out of your head that's overwhelming and
yeah,
putting it somewhere else for a bit, so that you can rearrange where it needs to be stored. And like you
exactly.
said, you come
Yeah,
away from therapy knowing that you've got the headspace then to make those lists and tick those tasks off as you go through them, and then celebrate those tasks. I think the celebration of getting the building work done, making sure your partner's all right, make sure the baby's okay, going on to have another baby, all of those things are celebratory in a journey that started with a struggle and a bit of overwhelm, you know.
yeah. And I hate the like buzzwords and things like that, but headspace is right. You literally need some space in your brain to just have a quiet thought, and things like that. And all these things when they say about well-being, what they actually mean is just make sure you're okay. Like it. I really like I have a sort of like natural aversion to, when they're like, oh, come to this wellness spa and things like that, and it's just like, right, what you're actually saying is just calm down, take it in, take a breather. Like,
Yeah, I have the same thing with the word mindfulness,
yes, yeah,
because
exactly, yeah.
a lot of people associate mindfulness with doing yoga in a field, but
Yeah,
actually for me, mindfulness is standing outside in the rain.
yeah,
Sometimes it's playing Fortnite on the PlayStation with my kids. Like, it's mindfulness is just having time inside your own head to rearrange
yeah, yeah.
the thoughts and stuff, isn't it?
yeah.
Um,
I watched a meme the other day about mindfulness. It was a comedian. Memes are great. We watch memes every night about 10:30, 11 o'clock. The guaranteed way, no matter what the day's been, to put a smile on your face, and it really shows what other parents are going through when you watch some of these memes. And it was a comedian talking about mindfulness in the 80s compared to, because I was born in the 70s, and
oh, you
how,
don't look a day over 20.
yeah, we were all mindful in the 80s and the 90s because we had no social media.
Yeah,
We'd be staring out the window. It was mindfulness 24/7, wasn't it? Whereas now you really do have to find that time to be, as Kieran said, inside your own space, and that's okay. That it's not, it's not a selfish thing to do that. It's something that we have to kind of engineer a little bit now because the world is different, and you have to find those times and spaces to be mindful. And I was just going to mention quickly about talking therapies. It's when I first heard about talking therapies a number of years ago, I thought, oh, that's a pretty simple way of describing this kind of, what is this thing, talking therapies? And then you kind of realize that actually it's much more cathartic to have a
yeah,
verbal conversation with someone than it is to have that internal conversation about the same topics in your head. And it was like a light bulb moment to me, thinking, oh yeah, it can be a vicious circle when you're running around things in your head. The conversation's there, the lists are there, the thoughts are there. But as soon as you verbalize some of that stuff to somebody else, it's cathartic. It really does. There might not be a solution there immediately, but just the act of verbalizing what's going on inside here is cathartic in itself. And I think, as Kieran said, at Dad Matters, that's part of what we try to do is to get that conversation with Dad, so dads feel able to just to share and to talk. And yeah, you've done it really well, Stef. And I think you had, having kids is tricky at the best of times, and you had a perfect storm of COVID, and I know what it's like doing up a house. My youngest was born in September of 19, and we started a loft conversion in the April of 20, the June of 20, when COVID was just kind of we're relieved a little bit. But she wasn't a newborn then as such, so you had a bit of a perfect storm there, didn't you, with lots of challenging things all coming at once.
A lot of the people I spoke to about it said, well, just one of those would have been enough, and it was and there was no way around it. That all of that had to happen, and it's just the way it is. And like you say, that with the therapist, it was just a sounding board. Like I still kept true to my own values. I did fix myself because it was me that was doing all the talking. So I felt like I'd done right by myself, because I always feel like it's my job to fix myself, because if I can't let that bit go. It's like a bit of control that I need, kind of thing. But the way the therapist did it was she let me effectively talk myself into it. I think and I said to her at the time, it's like going to the pub and having a really good conversation, but with that, because you're not drinking, you actually remember what you talked about.
Yeah, and I think I heard somewhere a little while ago, it just reminded me when you were talking about it there, somebody related mental health to physical health, and that happens quite often, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How we want to fix ourselves, so we think that the therapist is there to fix us, and that's not really related to what we're doing, but they're not. They're allowing us to fix ourselves. They give us the space and the time and the energy and things that we need to be able to fix ourselves. If you think about, if you have a broken leg, the person who puts the plaster cast on it is not fixing it. You are fixing it yourself. Your body is fixing your leg.
Yeah.
They're just holding it together so it fixes in the right way. And
Giving
I think
you the framework.
that framework for me is a great way to think about it, when you've got so many things in your head that the bits of your brain that are making decisions are overwhelmed. It's really hard to think about that. And when there's a baby in the mix, we really want to help the baby to get the best out of their parents. So things like therapy, but also the peer support work that we do at Dad Matters, Home Start, and when they visit people in the home, all of that opportunity just to have somebody to talk to is a great way to hopefully help them understand and have space for making those big decisions.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Like, because your dad instinct with a baby is, right, what can I do to help you, little one? And you completely forget about yourself. You almost put yourself to one side, and that's what was the problem. That I need to fix me first, and then I can really help you. Like it's you need everybody, not at the 100%, but you need to be okay so they can be okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think a good tool that you mentioned is that one day at a time, or one task at a time, isn't it? Because often when we have lists of things on paper, or even a list of things in our head, whether it's at work or whether it's at home, you do often think, well, where do I start? And some say, oh, you start at the beginning, you start at the top, you start,
It's not that easy.
Any of those jobs is a good place to start, isn't it, really? You just make a start. And I think definitely the one day at a time thing is that you mentioned is good advice, because it can help. It helps me as a dad to kind of reset overnight. I have this psychological thing in my head where tomorrow's a new day, it's a fresh start. Whatever went on the day before, whether it was good or bad, whether it's up or down, the night is I have that feeling of the night is a chance for me to kind of metaphorically reset and go again. And not that things are usually tricky at home, but definitely that thing of one thing at a time, one task at a time, one day at a time is really helpful when you do feel overwhelmed by lots and lots of things.
And don't forget, sleep deprivation can make you a little bit funny in the head as well. So like,
Yeah, it really can.
and it's going to happen. Whatever you think, if you think think you're going to get off easy, it's not happening.
Even if your newborn sleeps through the night, by the time they're 8 weeks, 12 weeks,
Yeah.
3 months, 6 months, it's the differences and the changes that happen in
Yeah.
sleep that's difficult. Like if your newborn never slept until they were 5 years old, you would get used to the routine. But because
Yeah.
their routine changes all the time, it completely messes up.
Told you,
what's-
agents of chaos, the little ones. Like you just got to
Absolutely, yeah.
embrace it. It's like
So we've got a couple more minutes left. I was thinking we can maybe think about 3 top tips for new dads. What 3 things would you say that you think would help a new dad that's expecting or going to be having a baby soon?
okay. So get involved. It's your job. Well, it's not your job. It's everybody's job is to raise that child. So the more you can do, the more you help out everybody else. That's one thing. Don't forget who you are. See, just because you become a dad overnight doesn't mean that you're not still you. You're just you in a different way. So still try and do the things you enjoy within reason. And third thing, get as much sleep as you can.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. Thank you so much for your time today, Steph. It's been really, for me, it's been a bit of an eye opener for somebody outside of my sphere talking about things that I'm really relating to. I think that helped a lot of people.
Just hang in there. It's like that old, was it 80s poster with the cat? Just hang in there. It's
Yeah.
one day at a time. You will get there. We'll get better. It does. It just hang in there.